I have this observation, having both worked in very large global enterprises and then as a consultant, a management consultant for many years, that the use of external data is behind the use of internal data. And what's very interesting, most large companies have many subscription external data sources, and that's very poorly governed and very poorly managed. And I think that I absolutely agree too that the pandemic increased the need for interoperability of internal enterprise data and external data sources. So I think that's a terrific observation that I just sort of wanted to tease out and make sure that we highlight in what you shared. Sticking with that thought a little bit, let's talk about streaming data and the importance of streaming data. And I think I have in my mind, and again, I'm sort of interested in your experience across the different businesses in GE. And I'm familiar, and hopefully most of our audience is familiar with this idea that I think GE may have really popularized this phrase of the industrial internet. So almost when I think of streaming data, the first thing that I start to think of is like jet engines, right? And streaming data from jet engines. So I guess a couple of questions, and I'm mixing a few things together, but how important is that streaming data in addition to the external data that you're kind of buying from a market standpoint to your business? And then kind of part two of the question, what have the experiences you've had been in the other divisions that are sort of more, I'll say, traditional industrial internet that are kind of different from life sciences or healthcare, and how have those all merged together?
Yeah, so a lot of questions in there.
Yes.
Let me try to unpack what you just
Yes.
said a little bit. I'll try to hit on some of these points. See, there are in my time between aviation to power to healthcare now, data analytics industry has really evolved. It has evolved to a point where what used to be thought like it will happen 20-30 years ago has already started happening in terms of how much volume of data can we handle, how much variety of data can we handle, how fast can we handle. So I think it's an industry probably that's moving faster than what we thought it would move. And I think things like the coronavirus have further accelerated it. Right? When you look at industries like aviation and power, a lot of the IoT data, that streaming data, is probably the machine data that we're getting from either our equipments that are installed in field. And primarily that what we use that for was really around improving our service contracts. In trying to find out when a failure is going to be happening and how do we do part sourcing and, the whole repair process and all of that. So that used to be the bigger focus of the streaming IoT machine kind of data, I would say maybe 3-4 years ago. But today, now we're taking this data and making that more into a revenue model, right? How do you look at this as a revenue opportunity to upsell newer type of services and products to our customers, which is to their benefit, so that they can do digital solutions instead of doing hardware and software kind of upgrades to their system. So that's a big shift that I have seen on the streaming data side for our traditional businesses. And I think it's similar in case of healthcare, right? If I look at healthcare, we today use a lot of the data that comes from our scanners and X-ray machines and all of that to see where do we do a lot more of remote service? How do you do a lot more of digital service so that, we don't really need our field service engineers to go into the hospitals, especially very, very important during the pandemic kind of situation. So there has been a lot of shift and end of the day, all of this is a combination of knowing your enterprise data, because if you don't know your master customer, you don't know your service contracts, you don't know how they are financed, if you do not know really how the service models are, which is all kind of in your ERP, in your Salesforce, ServiceMax kind of systems, and then effectively marry this with the data that's coming from the machines to figure out how should you be doing some of these things both internally and externally. So that's the kind of shift I see, Chris. But the other shift I see is really the platform play that is happening within the data analytics space. So for example, in the last couple of years, one of my biggest imperatives and one of the biggest things that I have been involved with is to really try to get a big platform play on a cloud-based native services approach to get all of the healthcare data together, so that traditionally DT or IT teams have been focused on getting the data together, the plumbing, the stitching of the data. But with a lot of cloud and native capabilities today, there are several big vendors like Amazon, Microsoft, who really provide you a lot of capabilities for doing that efficiently. And you, as a data analytics leader, can really focus on how do you generate new insights and new values from your data. That requires a platform strategy. It's very important. Then it requires investments in data management, data quality, because your outcomes are going to be as good as what your data is. And then finally, great collaboration and partnership in solving horizontal problems, because we've mostly solved vertical problems, finance, commercial, service, etc. But how do you solve a problem that is across these functions in a very efficient way with your data? And especially when your world is changing very fast and your center of gravity keeps shifting, it's almost like, how do you have a comprehensive data strategy that allows you to be nimble, at the time do both scale and speed? So if you ask me, the big shift that is happening in the whole data world is two, three things, to summarize what I said, right? I think the increased forces of external data becoming more important for internal decisions. The second thing is really about the mixing of enterprise and IoT data for both productivity and growth. And the third thing is really true importance of platforming and data management strategies.
Wow, that's awesome. That I think is just such a terrific summary of, and I very much agree with your points, and we see a lot of this in our businesses as well. And I think one thing that's extremely interesting to me about what you said is that there's a lot that's changed, but there's a lot that enterprises have traditionally not done very well around what I call data operations, master data management, data quality. Making sure that you have clean, unique customer records, clean, unique service contract records. And over the last 20 years, enterprises have struggled a lot just with those kind of fundamental building blocks of a data strategy. And that continues to be the case. But then, as you shared sort of the capabilities of interoperability based on technology growth, external data, the ability to employ hyperscalers kind of at scale so that your internal organization doesn't have to figure all of this out, has just created these amazing new opportunities. And then the third thing, just to kind of play back that idea of horizontal solutions, I think is brilliant. So I very much agree that there's again, if I think of something that enterprise business architecture and enterprise IT has always aspired to have, what people lovingly call this end-to-end view, and it's something that we've really not ever been very good at, and so it's just a very interesting world we live in, where there's a combination of things that forward-looking companies and IT and data leaders knew 20 years ago. They're still true, and we still need to kind of stick to our knitting and focus on that. And then there are all these new capabilities, and done correctly, the two of those things really can work together to improve business outcomes, clinical outcomes, revenue outcomes, and use data as a fuel for growth. So I think those are some really terrific insights.